Well, happy Mindfulness Monday, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us today. If you're new here, let us know in the chat so we can say hi to you. And welcome if you're returning mindfulness member. So grateful that you keep coming back. Just know that you'll be muted for the duration of today's session. Feel free to use that chat function to communicate with us, share questions, thoughts, or where you're joining from if you feel so obliged. And we invite you to join us on camera. We like to see each other here and totally understand, if you're walking or if you're sitting in the car, if there's things happening around you and you feel that it would serve you best to be off camera, please lean into that. And our next live session will be next week, March 17th. Wear green. Just an invitation, or come with a fun virtual background to celebrate the lucky day of St. Patrick's Day. Perfect. And following Mindfulness Mondays, every week, PD Health at Home offers various different programs depending on what day of the week is, whether it's Mindfulness Mondays, Wellness Wednesdays, our Fitness Fridays, our Expert Briefing series, which kicks off this year, season 16. We've been doing expert briefings for 16 years. That's wild. And speaking to our expert briefing that will be happening this Wednesday, it's centered around nourishment, nutrition for Parkinson's disease. We know that food is more than just fuel, and it plays a vital role in how we think, how we feel, and how we move. So this week's expert briefing explores that connection between nutrition and Parkinson's, covering how diet influences brain health, gut function, and overall well-being. We'll discuss the impact of food on the body's systems, the role of protein and medication effectiveness, and how to use nutrition as a tool to enhance our quality of life. You can learn more and join us for the live stream, or register to receive that recording link at parkinson.org/PD Health. And today's program is presented by the Light of Day Foundation. Thank you, Light of Day, for supporting the mission of the Parkinson's Foundation. And we welcome Dr. Taylor Rush back to our Mindfulness Monday, who has a really important topic for us to be mindful and intentional, having the discussion around, and then a mindful meditation around. So Dr. Rush, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the introduction, Krista. And hello, everyone. It's good to see you all today. I wanted to see what you guys would think about our topic today. I have noticed, I often will use themes that I notice when I'm working with people with Parkinson's and kind of help that to feed a little bit of the topics that I share with you guys. And recently, I've noticed a theme with some of my patients surrounding anger. And I thought maybe we could lean into this a little bit and talk about anger and how to mindfully understand anger and why we experience it and how to process it when it happens. Because we have all these different various emotions. Sometimes we're feeling happy, sometimes we're excited, sometimes we're content, sometimes we're sad or anxious. But then there are times when truly we are angry. And I find when I'm working with people in therapy that of all the emotions, that seems to be the one people are often most reluctant to express. Even if they are noticing some very real visceral effects from anger, their chest might get tight, their jaw might get clenched. They might even notice that their tremor or rigidity worsens because they are intensely angry about something. And I think part of it is we're socialized to think that happiness is good and we should feel happy and feeling angry is bad. And I think that we really need to kind of call this out, because I think part of feeling anger is being human. And sometimes there are things that happen in the world or to us that we're angry about, and that is perfectly valid. And sometimes I think people may associate a feeling almost of shame with feeling angry, that if they express it, it's because you don't have self-control, or you're being unreasonable, or you're exaggerating a situation out of proportion. When truly there are times when our anger is very real and very appropriate. And if you think about, okay, so what is anger? What does that mean? And sometimes anger is a little bit more than one thing at a time. It can be anything from just kind of annoyance or irritation, all the way up to full on this hostility and just, this sense of, huge threat. And that's really why it has evolved over time is a way for us to identify and be able to handle threats or personal violations or injustices. And we find that anger has a strong role in our lives. It can actually help to promote motivation. And I'll often tell my daughter that, who's in the midst of, some academic angst, and, she'll get upset and feel defeated if she doesn't get, the grades that she wants. And I tell her, I'm like, don't get upset, like sad, get mad, get angry about it. And it helps to then feed into, a better pattern of coping, and sometimes helps her to then achieve her goals. And there's been research that even shows that when people get angry about puzzles, they actually tend to do better at the puzzles. And we show that, overall, anger can also help us with establishing appropriate boundaries when people may sometimes take advantage or may say things that are insensitive. Or sometimes anger helps to then advocate for needs and make sure that they get met. There's a lot of function that can be associated with that emotion of anger. And I think for a lot of my patients who are trying to manage Parkinson's disease, anger is an incredibly appropriate and sometimes very powerful part of their experience. And I hear people voice anger about a lot of different things. Sometimes it's just about their diagnosis. They might feel angry at the world or the universe or God, or anger towards themselves because they didn't do something to prevent it, even though logically they know that that's not something that they could have done. Anger sometimes at their own body for not cooperating in the ways that it used to, or sometimes anger at friends or family because they may be saying things that aren't terribly supportive or possibly insensitive. So I think it's important for us to recognize anger as a valid emotion, but then also, what do you do with it when you feel it? And how do you honor that? And how do you work through it and use it in a way that's going to help you move forward with your life? So, for those of you who may be having a visceral reaction to the idea of thinking about anger, I want you to lean into that too, because I think that's important to recognize that, gosh, what is my reaction when I have anger? Do I tend to push it away? Do I tend to notice it and feel it? Do I tend to get very reactive towards it and, may say things or do things that I would then later regret? So I think, think about how you tend to relate to anger, and recognizing that, part of the challenge that we're doing here today is that anger is not bad. Anger is a way for you to better understand your situation and yourself and what you need to do. And so, and again, this is all in the context of appropriate anger, when something truly happens that is, appropriate to be angry about, not inappropriate anger, which is often where people may end up engaging in destructive behaviors, or it's a pattern that has never really been addressed, and they kind of go from steady and then they have like these volcanic eruptions every once in a while. A lot of times that's because anger gets stuffed down and isn't ever expressed in the right ways. So let's talk about what those right ways can look like. So I think the first step towards this is really being able to recognize and honor your anger. How do you authentically express anger without judgment? I think, we talk about, mindfulness being present in the moment without judgment. And that includes any particular emotional experience that you're having, including anger. So if you notice that you tend to suppress anger when you feel it because it's unacceptable or unhealthy, at least that's your knee-jerk reaction, it means that it ends up kind of going underground and it just buries deeper until, again, it explodes in some way. So how do we recognize that anger is an appropriate emotion? And how do we then kind of work our way through it? So that's going to be the topic of our meditation today. So again, we're going to lean into the discomfort if that's what you feel when we start to consider anger. Or, if you notice that anger does come up often for you, this allows you an opportunity to lean into that as well and maybe come up with some ideas as to why that may happen as a pattern. So we'll embark on this journey together. So go ahead and get in your comfy position. Physically, I want you to feel as able to kind of tune into yourself and your body as you can. And we can start by anchoring with a few deep breaths. Just intentionally taking a slow, deep breath in and slow, deep breath out. Maybe doing this 2 or 3 times. So you allow yourself to settle into yourself. Maybe feel where you are being supported by your furniture. So if you can feel your spine being supported, feeling your hips being supported, possibly your feet on the ground, but just noticing your anchoring points. Allow the breath to come into a more natural rhythm for you. Knowing that at any time you can always come back to the breath as a point of grounding. It's always a space for respite. We're going to embark on a little bit of an exploration of anger through a meditation exercise by Jessica Moray. So I want you to conjure in your mind's eye a time in the recent past where you might have felt angry. And I'm not looking for the angriest that you've ever been, but maybe a situation where you felt irritation or annoyance, not necessarily feeling enraged. So for some people, it's getting cut off in traffic or someone making a snide remark. Something where it was enough of an irritation that you remember it. I want you to paint that scenario in your mind. Consider the words that were spoken by you and anyone else in that situation. Maybe reflect on your own thought process in that experience. What were you saying to yourself as the situation unfolded? Maybe what were you feeling in your own body at that time, too? Some very visceral physical sensations that many people associate with a state of annoyance, irritation, or anger. As you paint the situation and your response to it, I want you to think about the narrative surrounding the experience. What was the subtext? Meaning, if it something that someone else did, what did they do that they shouldn't have done? How were you wronged? How should the situation have been different? And whatever that might be, just let that story run its course. And you might even notice some of those physical sensations of irritation in your body. You notice those sensations, whether it's feeling your stomach tying up in knots, feeling your shoulders scrunching up towards your ears. You're noticing gritting your teeth, frowning. I want you to remove yourself from the thoughts of your situation. You're just going to cut down that narrative. And I just want you to direct your attention to your body and really feel what's going on in there. Where do you notice the anger within your body? Where does it tend to flow? And I want you to consider switching gears. Mindful awareness. We have this spotlight where we can focus on different aspects of our experience that are occurring simultaneously. So I want to challenge you to find something that feels neutral. Might be your left pinky toe, tips of your ears. Maybe even find something that feels pleasant in your body. Maybe you can feel your feet in soft slippers, the softness of the chair that you're in. Feeling of your hands touching. Goal here is to create space surrounding the anger. To recognize that anger occurs simultaneously to other things. We can allow the anger to be there while also acknowledging other parts. But you might notice that your mind wanders back to that narrative of the situation that happened, with thoughts about what may have gotten you angry. And that's okay. It's a spotlight that the brain may direct toward. I want you to gently, with intent, redirect your attention to those neutral sensations that surround you or within your body. Sometimes it helps to go outside of the body, like a ticking clock or the gentle whir of a fan. Just allowing yourself to settle and take a few breaths here. And you might notice that you start to feel a little calmer as you focus on these other aspects of your sensory surroundings. But in that moment, it gives you clarity to explore the anger again more directly. Noticing those areas where you tend to feel the anger. You may even notice that there's a temperature to the sensation of anger. It might make you feel hot, sometimes go cold. You may feel sharp or dull. Just noticing the sensations with curiosity and open-mindedness. So we hold space for the anger. You might notice that there are other emotions that come into play as well. Sometimes people may notice fear, loneliness, sadness. Sometimes when the anger is the thing that speaks the loudest, we don't hear the other emotions that might be whispering. Again, we're not trying to think about these emotions or judge them, just trying to feel them in your body. You may even ask yourself, what does this anger need? What does it want me to know? Their sense of action of what you may need to do, or perhaps finding words that help you to make sense of it, or what you may need from others. We round out our experience with leaning into anger. I want you to think about if you've had any insights in what you could do to skillfully respond to this anger or irritation. What would really help to take care of this feeling? Might be having a conversation with someone, might be recognizing that there are needs that you need to take care of for yourself that have been neglected. Sometimes I'm really exhausted and I need to sleep, or I'm restless and I need to move, or I have not fueled myself in a while and need to eat. Thinking about it interpersonally as well as intrapersonal. We need to draw better boundaries with individuals that tend to take advantage. So just thinking about the kinds of things you may need to do to Give the anger what it needs. Maybe picking just one thing, one action may help you in a situation similar in the future. Go ahead and take one more intentional deep breath here. And just look back to more active awareness, wiggling fingers and toes. Opening your eyes when you're ready. And take a few minutes to reflect. I'm always open to comments in our chat. How was this experience for you today? It's a little bit different than our norm for sure, but I think it's an incredibly appropriate and very powerful thing to be able to address. And sometimes those things are not the most comfortable, but need to be explored and be given words. Otherwise, we end up sometimes neglecting the things that we need the most. So I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts on this.
There's a question, Dr. Rush, from Bill, and they ask, how do I know if my feeling of anger is appropriate?
So I think that that is a great question because for many people, they often question themselves on that. Am I feeling this way and it's reasonable, or am I feeling this way and it's not reasonable? And so sometimes one way of sorting that out is to talk to someone about it and say, I'm really feeling these intense feelings of anger, irritability, or hostility. What are your thoughts about this? Am I in the right or am I not? And so sometimes getting some check and balance from others can help. I think also anger that is inappropriate often ends up creating some destructive patterns. And it may mean that people end up alienating themselves from their support system, their loved ones. They may later look back on situations and regret how they handled it, that perhaps they said things or did things that they're like, man, that really wasn't probably my best option in that moment. And it may have caused some lasting damage to, some of these people that I care about or the relationship I have with them. In those situations, there can be, there can be a case possibly that it might be inappropriate anger, but really can be a case by case basis. But I would say sometimes if you have a trusted other that you can talk to that has perspective, maybe outside of you, that can often help us to get a little bit of grounding and bearings. Let's see. Ooh, looks like we've got a couple more comments here. I see that sometimes you're not aware of where anger comes from. Absolutely. And I think that's important too, because oftentimes if we have a very strong reaction to something, it may not necessarily just be about that situation. It may expand well beyond it. It may be a pattern of behavior. It might be something that we've been suppressing, and then it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then it comes out and people are like, hey, why are you so upset? It might have been something that's been building for a while, and we have to explore, where is that coming from? And someone said, I like noticing the areas of anger and discomfort balanced with areas that are neutral and pleasant. And that, I think is important for us to realize that it's not always one or the other. We can have both at the same time. Molly said, feeling a softening shift in my physical body and mind around a situation of irritability and anger. I like that too, because I think when we lean into it, we think, oh gosh, if I lean into it, I'm going to feel more uncomfortable. When in fact, if we can explore it with that sense of curiosity, without judgment. It helps us to then change the relationship with the anger and help us get our needs met. Let's see, anger occurs suddenly when I'm frustrated with many losses and I'm unable to access any gratitude. Uh, and and yeah, there can be some very intense thoughts that can surround anger. And there's a sense of wanting to escape or wanting to jar yourself in some way, and sometimes that's even physically to try to snap out of it. And I think it's almost in a way that people try to desperately ground themselves. And so I think that that is important to recognize that that may be your knee-jerk reaction. And then what do we do instead to make sure that you're managing some very powerful emotions in a way that helps you instead of harms you? And really uncomfortable to feel situational anger, but resulted in important reflection and a plan going forward. So again, what does the anger teach us? What is it trying to tell us, and what needs are not being met? And hence its existence a lot of times. And beneath anger, fear may be there, often is, because there's a sense of threat often associated with anger, loss of control due to Parkinson's, and what to expect from the future. That can, again, it's that sense of threat, that sense of uncertainty that then can bring anger out. And again, for a lot of people, anger with higher power, with God, with the universe, I hear that often. And some notice flattening of feelings because of some of how their Parkinson's has affected them, and I have seen that too. There's a lot of anger and grief associations I'm noticing in the chat as well. And loss of previous forms of functioning, loss of loved ones, and they're I think grief and anger often go hand in hand, and so that can sometimes be a link that's buried under the anger that people don't always put together at first, but then when they do, it feels very valid and strong. Oh my gosh, you guys are doing so good with your comments today, and I really appreciate you showing up for this because I know it's hard. But I do also recognize that we are a few minutes past our time, and so I really appreciate you guys hanging on with me here and going on a little bit different of a journey today. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. And knowing that this subject is not an easy one, and it's by practicing having conversations and dialogue, whether it's with a health professional, your community, with yourself, is how we make these hard conversations a little bit easier to navigate through, whether we're alone or in community. So an invitation to take a deep breath into your nose. And then we're going to sigh it out audibly. Just a big sound out. Yeah. Let's do another one. This just helps relax the nervous system some. Breathing in through the nose and breathing out. I'm very proud of all of you for addressing these difficult conversations and continuing to come back in these mindful ways so we can continue grow as individuals and in community. So thank you so much for being here. As you navigate the week ahead, things could change, things could shift. If you have questions that go beyond mindfulness and Parkinson's, please do not hesitate to reach out to our helpline. The phone number and emails there on the screen. You can also explore our comprehensive website at parkinson.org. Until soon, my friends, be well.